Hi friends, it's Caitlin with Kaleideum, and today I am in my backyard and I'm going to teach you the soil mudshake test to figure out what your soil texture is in your backyard. The reason we would want to do this is because if you want to start a garden or maybe plant some flowers and plants, it's really important to figure out what kind of soil you have in your backyard in order for your plants to grow and to maybe even give us some fruits and vegetables. So there are many different ways to test your soil. You can send it to an extension center and get your pH, but today we're going to do a simple and fun method called the Mudshake test, where we're really just going to use the dirt in our backyard, the soil, and figure out what our layers are made of and what kind of soil we have. So before we begin, we have 3 words that we have to remember. The first one is sand, second one is silt, and the third one is clay. So these 3 words are how we determine our soil texture. So sand, like I have here, is going to be very grainy. So if we can come in here, we have all of these fine particles. You can actually see those particles of sand. And that sand is going to be very coarse. And what that has is it's going to allow our water to drain through it because it has a larger pore space, which is pretty much the space in between each of these tiny little fine grains of sand. And then our second one is silt. So we have some silt. It has more of a floury texture, a little bit smaller particles, and it really feels like flour when it's dry, but when it's wet, it kind of clumps together just a little bit. And then our final one, we're very familiar with it here in North Carolina, is clay. The finest particle size, it's very small, and it clumps together like this. This is dry clay, otherwise it'd be super sticky, almost like clay or Play-Doh that you'd play with inside. So in order to do this experiment, you want to get a jar with some flat sides. This is just an old pasta jar that I had some peppers in it. And you're going to fill it 2/3 with water. So if we were to separate this into thirds, 1, 2, 3, 2 of those thirds would be filled with water. You can do some gloves if you don't want to get your hands too messy, and a spade or a little shovel. So what I'm going to do here is just dig down. My soil is not great here, so I have to dig pretty far. You can already see probably going to be a lot of clay in here. Oh, and make sure your jar has a lid. That's important too, because we will be shaking this. Grab a good slice of soil here, get some of the sticks out, and we're going to pour in all the way up almost to the top. So we're going to just throw that soil right in there and keep on digging. Throw some more of that soil in there. Just like this. I'm fighting a lot of ivy. I have poison ivy and I have English ivy in my backyard, so I have to go around a lot of the roots and the vines to get down here. Continue to fill it up to it's almost just about full, just like that. So see how it's just almost full. It looks really murky, but this is the fun part. We're going to cap this and we're going to shake it. We're going to continue to shake it. Now what we're doing here is we're going to separate all of those little particles and we're going to see which ones sink to the bottom, which ones are staying in the middle, and which ones float to the top. So the lightest particles are going to be on the top and the heaviest particles are going to be on the bottom. And I'll give you a little hint. The sand, since it has the largest particles, is going to sink to the bottom. So we're going to shake this up really nice until we get super muddy, murky water. And that is our soil mudshake test. And what we're going to do next is going to take a few days to be able to see what we're going to see here. So I'm going to go inside and put this on my counter where I won't bump it. So if you do this at home, make sure you're putting it out of the way so no one bumps into it. And over the next 2 days, I want you to observe what happens to this murky water. Notice how things start to settle down. Try not to bump it at all. And see what things are happening at the bottom, in the middle, and at the top. And then I'll come back with you in 2 days, and we are going to figure out what type of soil texture we have in our backyards. See you in 2 days. Hi friends, it has been 2 days since I put my soil into my jar of water and shook it all up. And it's been on my countertop here at my house, undisturbed. I have not touched this jar for 2 whole days. And now is the science part. We are going to figure out what kind of soil texture we have in our backyard. So we remembered the words sand, silt, and clay. And those are going to play a big, important role in what we're going to talk about today. So we are going to need a ruler, and you're going to need your clay. And don't worry about shaking it just a little bit. You can move it around, but try not to really agitate or shake it up because we want it to stay nice and separated, just like mine here. So let's get a close-up view and let's talk about the science
of my backyard. Now we're going to figure out the soil texture by finding the percentage of sand, silt, and clay. So in order to do this, we're going to have to do some math. But first, grab your handy dandy ruler. This is my Earth Day ruler that I got in 3rd grade. It's been with me for about 20 years now. So I'm going to use this beautiful ruler here. And what I'm going to do is measure the height of each of the layers that I see here, as well as the total height of all of the layers. So what do I mean by that? I am going to put my ruler up against my jar here, and you can see all of the sediment, all of the soil, all the way up to about this point here. And if I run my finger across, what number's there? 3. So I have 3 inches of total soil in this jar. If I wiggle it just a little bit, you can see that the top here is kind of moving and there's some stuff floating on top. That's just some natural debris, some natural objects. So I got some mulch in there and just anything that's lighter than the sand, silt, and clay. So my total height is 3 inches. So if you need to, you can write that down, that number down for your total height. That's an important number that we will need. Now our next number, we're going to look at this top layer here. What do you think that layer is? It's kind of orange. Here in North Carolina, we have a lot of it. That is going to be our clay. Now remember what I was saying, the clay actually is going to, the clay is going to actually be on the top because it is a little bit lighter than the silt, which will be in the middle, and the sand that is on the bottom. That sand has the biggest particles. You can actually, if you look really close, you can see those individual grains or those particles that have floated to the bottom. They're larger, so they're heavier and will float all the way down to the bottom. Then the silt is kind of like that floury texture that I was talking about. That's going to stay right here in the middle. It's a little bit lighter than the sand, but it is heavier than the clay. And let's measure our clay first. So my clay, I'm going to measure a few different spots here. My clay looks like it's going to be about 1/2 inch. So we'll write down 1/2 inch, or in decimal, 0.5 inches. Then we are going to measure our silt. Now this might be a little harder. You really have to look at the size of the particles that we're seeing down here. And it looks like mine end just about here. So I'm going to put my ruler right there. The top of my silt layer is here, and the bottom's right around there. So I have 1.5 inches, or in decimal form, 1.5 inches. We'll write that down. Then next we have our sandy layer. And if I don't want to put my ruler all the way to the bottom here because I have a little bit of glass. So I need to measure right where that layer of sand starts, which is right about here, a little bit off of the ground. And I'm going to measure just to about here. So it looks like I have about 1 inch of sand. Now, we are going to take those numbers and we're going to divide the height of each layer by the total height of how much soil we have in our jars. So my total height was 3. For sand, I had 1 inch. Silt, I had 1.5 inches. And clay, I had 1/2 inch. So let's do the math. First, we're going to start with my sand layer. So 1 divided by 3 is 0.33, which means that that is going to be 33%. So I'll write that down. Our silt layer here is 1.5, so 1.5 in decimal form divided by 3 is 50%. So I have 50% clay and 33% sand. So now I'm going to do the math for clay. Clay is only 1/2 inch, so 0.5 divided by 3 is 0.666667. So I'm going to round that up a little bit to 0.17, which will be 17%. Now comes the fun part. We have a USDA soil texture triangle that looks like this. So when we look at this soil texture triangle, we are going to figure out our soil type. So notice that the base of this triangle is sand, the right side is silt, and the left side is clay. We are going to find our percentages and follow the lines until they all meet to a certain point, like this. So it looks like I have silt loam, and loam just means it's a mixture of sand, silt, and clay. So why do we care? Why do we need to know this number? Well, I'm a gardener. I love to garden. I love to plant plants. I love to plant vegetables and fruits. And most garden plants actually prefer loamy soils with a balance of sand, silt, and clay. So the perfect balance that most plants like, not all plants, you do have to read the descriptions of your plants and do a little research on them, but most garden plants love about a 40% of sand, 40% of silt, and 20% of clay. So my numbers were actually pretty close to that. So I thought my soil was pretty bad in my backyard, but it's really not bad at all. It's actually kind of perfect for garden plants. Now, if you were to have a large percentage of clay, if you dug up some soil and you're like, but Miss Caitlin, I have tons of clay. Well, unfortunately, it will have poor drainage. So the roots may not do as well on your plants because they may get too soggy, and a lot of plants don't like wet feet, just like I don't like wet feet. But there are some solutions here. You can actually add or amend soil. So you can add some compost or even some manure, as fun as that sounds, to your soil to make the soil texture a little bit better. And so your plants can live a little bit better. They have more nutrients without all that clay, and the water's able to move through the soil or percolate just a little bit better so they don't struggle as much in that super hard clay. Now, sandy soils, if you have too much sand, the water can actually drain too quickly and dry your plants out, and they do like a good drink of water. So the same thing, you can amend your soil or fix your soil just by adding some topsoil, which is just kind of ground up pieces of mulch and things like that. Or you can also add some denser soils like some compost as well. Now, by knowing your soil texture, you can actually grow your healthy plants and have an amazing garden and watch them grow all summer long. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. I hope you figured out a little bit more about the soil in your backyard. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Kaleideum. I will be happy to help you. Once again, I'm Caitlin, and today you learned about the soil mud shake test on Kaleideum at home. Thanks for watching.